Are you tired of feeling overwhelmed by your finances, constantly wondering where your money's going? Well, trust me, you aren't alone. One 2023 study estimated that 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, with that number rising almost every year. Of the millennials that responded, 57% of them reported their primary reason was lack of budgeting or financial planning. So if you're one of those people that's never made a budget before, is drowning in debt, or is just ready to take their finances to the next level, this video is for you. We'll cover how I got started fixing my finances so I could purchase my second investment property before I turned 30. I'm going to help you ditch the uncertainty and get on a path to financial stability. If you're ready to take your first steps towards mastering your finances, then let's get into it together. How's it going, everyone? If this is your first time here, my name is Christian, and this is the first video in a new series I'm calling Money Matters. In this series, we're going to break down everything I know about financial literacy, from budgeting and investing in real estate, that my wife and I have used to both be on track to retire before we turn 40. I'll share not only what has worked really well for us, but new things we might try along the way. So when it comes to budgeting, first and foremost, I like to have an idea of my why. Why do I care about making a budget? What financial goals am I striving for? Maybe you don't like feeling the pressure of being underwater on your finances all the time. Or maybe you just want to have some extra money saved to create a better life for your family. There's plenty of great reasons to start. You just have to find the one that's the most likely to make you stick to your budget. There's been so many times over the past decade that I've wanted to go spend more money on, just whatever. But my why of both me and my wife being financially free so we could spend more time traveling together, and now more time with our daughter, has kept me on track more than once. It really helps to begin with the end in mind to help keep you honest. Now that you have your why, I just need you to stick with me for a second. I have a couple of sample budget templates that you can use to make your own. First, we need to track our expenses. I think the most time efficient and simple way to do this is just to pull your bank statements for the last month and then put everything into a free spreadsheet like Google Sheets. This is going to be so you can find out exactly how much you spent in terms of your fixed costs and your variable costs and your discretionary spend. I made a couple of budget templates just for illustration purposes to help walk you through it. Okay, so this first one, I just wanted to keep as simple as possible. You can see right here, we have your income, which is just how much money you make. Is it just your primary job, or do you have a side hustle or some sort of freelance work that you do? Next, we have savings. I know a lot of people first starting out may not agree with this, but I've always learned that you should save first. You can see here that it's recommended to ideally put away 10 to 20% of your income, but you can see underneath that I have save what you can, even if it's only $10 a month. Because really what it's about right now is just building the habit. Think of it this way. You work your ass off for 40 hours a week, and then you pay everyone else before you pay yourself. It's funny how that usually ends up working out. If you let everyone else have a piece of your pie before you get a slice, pretty soon when it gets around to you, there's nothing left. And a lot of times in America, there's negative left. If you can learn the habit of saving money first and then reducing expenses elsewhere, it's much easier to set yourself up for success in the future. So after savings, you can see that we have our needs, which is just the things you can't physically live without, like shelter, water, food, those kinds of things. Here we have housing, utilities is kind of included in housing, food, transportation, clothes, I have a little asterisk next to it. If you're in debt and you're trying to get out of debt, you don't need the Supreme hoodie or the Supreme backpack. That's the only major brand that I know. I mean, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, I guess those two. Up until the past couple months, I had a collection of 13 of the exact same black t-shirts that I just wore every single day since 2019. So I guess it's been 5 years of wearing the same rotation of plain black shirts that I had a bunch of, and they were $3 to $5 each. You don't need ultra expensive clothes. Get what you need to be comfortable in, and then get something that you can wear for work. It's really all you need. Finally, we have your wants here at the bottom, which is just everything else. So this is the very, very simplified budget template. If this is your first time making a budget, you can just use this template to make a really simple budget just to get an idea of where your money's going. For the second budget template, I have a little bit more of a detailed breakdown for some of the common expenses that the average American has. So you can see here, I actually broke down expenses a little bit further than this one to fixed and variable needs. I call them variable needs because you have to pay for utilities, groceries, and gas. But unless you're buying the exact same groceries every single month, or you're getting gas from the exact same gas station where gas prices fluctuate anyways, you're gonna have a little bit of play in those kinds of areas. And then here at the bottom, again, we have discretionary wants, eating out, shopping, subscriptions, those kinds of things. So now comes the time for us to actually make our budget. You can also see here in this column, for things like the variable needs and your discretionary spending, I put an actual spent category. That way at the end of the month, you can look at exactly what you had allocated for groceries and how much you actually spent on them. Do you need to adjust next month? The same goes for all the other expenses, pretty much other than the fixed ones. So I went ahead and filled this budget out with the average income and the average expenses that Americans spend on each of these individual categories. So you can see right here at the top, I have $3,107. That's the average income in America. The only thing that I have split up is you can see average rent divided by 2, and you can see average utilities divided by 2. Because in most areas, if you make this kind of money, you'll probably have a roommate or someone else that you live with, unless you're in a super low cost of living area. So you can see first, Average rent in America, a lot of different sources, ballpark around $1,500. You know, if you're in San Francisco, obviously going to be way higher. If you're in Gulfport, Mississippi, probably going to be a little bit lower. Next is car loan. This one frustrates me. Even owning new vehicles in the past, which I don't now. I have a paid off, used, like 20-year-old truck. Even at the time in my past that I've owned a new vehicle, I have never had a car payment above $350 a month. This is the average car loan on a used vehicle in America. The average on a new vehicle was like $740. Like, you don't need a BMW. Just go get like a Honda Accord. Next, we have credit cards. You can see a little note I put here. Typically, the minimum payment for a credit card is between $20 and $35, or between 1% and 3% of the total amount owed on the credit card, whichever one is greater. I just took the average amount of credit card debt in America, which was like $5,300-ish, just randomly picked a spot and split that number in two. So that way one credit card would be like the $35 flat minimum payment, and the other one worked out to a certain percentage of the remainder. So it was like $112 for the minimum payment every month. Next, we have student loans. $308 is the average student loan minimum payment for someone who got a bachelor's degree. So we'll just go off that. And then insurance, $212, again, national average. Next, we get down to the average utilities divided by 2. So this would be your half. Groceries, this was actually for, I believe, a household average. With the way groceries are right now, though, even an individual, it wouldn't surprise me if groceries ended up being roughly in this ballpark. So I went ahead and left that one where it is. And then gas, again, national average, $178 a month. So this expense total part, this is just the expenses from here in our fixed category, and then here in our variable needs. That equals $2,765. Now you'll notice that I didn't save anywhere on here yet because I want to illustrate the point that I mentioned earlier about saving first and then reducing expenses elsewhere. So now we're going to get into the discretionary / wants category. Average American spends about $300 eating out every month. Well, that's most of what we have left over in our budget. The average American spends $475 a month shopping. They also spend, and this one was crazy to me, the average American thinks they spend about $80 a month in subscriptions. In reality, they spend about $200. I think it was actually over $200 and I rounded down. And it's all those little things that you know, $5 here, $10 there a month that they forget to cancel that just stay recurring forever. So I actually go through the process of removing any extra subscriptions I have like every 4 months. And I promise you it's a good idea because even with me doing it that frequently, there's always still some random $10 charge on there. If I just left them forever, then I would be spending $200-300 a month on these kinds of things. And then $300 a month for miscellaneous fun, you know, whatever else you want to do. So you can see that the new expense total is $4,040. New total is negative $933 a month. So clearly, there is no money left over for saving. Actually, I have a funny story about this. I was very fortunate that my parents raised me from a young age to ingrain the habit of saving first, and I just couldn't really relate to these numbers when I saw them. So I gave my dad a call because I figured he might be able to relate to this a little more. He was a high school dropout, eventually turned military officer, turned business owner, and is now very successful. When I asked him about this, if he had ever experienced this in his life, he went, "Oh yeah, 100%. The first time I did our finances, I found that we were making negative $550 a month. I adjusted that for inflation, and that was actually like negative $1,100 today." So he was like worse off than the average American is now. So trust me, it is absolutely doable for you to get things in order and fix them. You just got to start learning and practicing these good habits like making a budget every month. So don't despair yet. I actually went ahead and I changed this budget a little bit to the way that I would actually make my budget if this were the exact amount of money that I made. Before we get into the rest of the video, this video is sponsored by me. This takes a lot of work for me to do on my own, from all the producing and editing of my own content. So if you made it this far in the video, I would really appreciate if you would hit subscribe. Now, back to the video. So you can see on my version of the budget, I kept the income the same, but the first thing I did was I saved 10% of the money. Pretty much everything past that in the fixed category stayed the same, with the exception of the car loan. I mentioned before how ridiculous it was to be paying that kind of money. Even with bad credit, I got that down under $500 a month. So the vehicle that I looked at earlier whenever I made this budget actually seems to have sold, so I went and found this different one with my credit score and a 20% down payment, and you can see that it's $255 to $280 a month. Credit cards, I kept the same. Student loan debt, I kept the same. $308 is the national minimum. For insurance, I kept that the same. And then for variable needs, the only thing I changed here was the groceries. I slightly reduced them. And that's because when you try to get your finances in order for the first time, you're going to have to make some cuts and you're going to have to make some sacrifices somewhere. And all I'm saying is, once a month, maybe twice a month when you go to get groceries, just replace some of the more expensive things with, a bag of rice or a couple cans of beans, some cans of tuna. There are other very affordable options out there. So even having saved 10% of our money, finding places to reduce expenses elsewhere in our budget, we are able to have the same leftover for the discretionary portion of our budget, even after having saved. So now when we get down to the discretionary portion, you'll see that this is where most of the cutbacks are happening. Eating out went from $300 to $150 a month. Shopping went from something like $475. That's ridiculous. For 3 months, you just keep this set aside and you rip your pants and you go buy some new pants. It's fine. Subscriptions, this is more realistic if you're really trying to tighten down your finances and you really need to make sure your money stretches the whole month. So with subscriptions, most streaming services with ads are less than $10 a month. Just get one, watch whatever you want on there for 2 or 3 months, cancel it, and then go get the other one. You don't need to watch Netflix and HBO and Hulu and Disney Plus all at the same time. Just pick one, cancel it after you've watched everything you want to do on there, and then get the other one. And then miscellaneous fun, I still left $50 in here because, maybe you want to go to the movies or there's something else you want to spend a little bit of money on, or you could just lump it in with your shopping portion of the budget, go buy something for yourself. It's absolutely okay. That's why we budget. It's because you're giving yourself permission to spend money in these areas. So you can see that even after your needs are met and after you have your discretionary spending all organized, there is still $87 left in the budget. And with that $87, you can do whatever you want. I would recommend paying a little bit more than the minimum to get out of credit card debt. Or you could spend more on groceries because maybe it's like you and another person in your household. If you really wanted to spend it on something discretionary, you can do that too. You want to make sure that your budget at the beginning of the month, ideally, you want to spend every penny of this before you actually go out and spend any money, which is why I recommend just putting it into the savings. But you can allocate that money wherever you would like to. Now that you know how much money you have, you don't have to be at negative $933 at the end of the month. The important thing is that you just know where every dollar you make is going. So once your budget is made, you're not done yet. You should be reviewing this budget every month. And that's why I had that actual column in there so you can see where you need to make adjustments for the future to make sure you're not overspending. The most important thing you can do here is just have consistency and following your budget every month. If you're anything like me, the longer you do this, the more you're going to enjoy it because you'll try to squeeze every dollar out that you can and you want to just see your savings continue to grow faster and faster. Finally, you should be celebrating your small victories. Even if you can just get to the point that you have more saved than you do credit card debt, you're already ahead of 36% of Americans. And if you're able to cover a $1,000 emergency from your savings, you're already ahead of 56% of Americans. Just know that building up a financial nest egg takes time. Before my wife and I bought our first investment property, I had been saving for 8 years and she had already been saving for 12. And if you made it this far in the video and you actually followed these steps and made your first budget, then I'm super stoked for you and I'm also super proud of you because this is such a big step in securing your financial future. So if you enjoyed this video, then maybe you'll enjoy one of my other videos in the Money Matters series or maybe some of my other content about personal growth. But thanks for stopping by and I'll see you in the next one.